Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a list of series I'm planning on continuing in 2020. I recently did a video of series I'm hoping to complete in 2020. I'll have that linked down below. But this particular video, these are series that maybe I've read the first one and I'm not completely sold. I'm not ready to commit to saying I want to put all the time and effort into completing the series. Or maybe they're just really long series and so I would like to read a few more in the series, but maybe not all of them. And both of those things are true for Malazan by Steven Erikson. This is a series that, oh my gosh, do you guys get really intense about. I love that so many of you are wanting to know what I think of it, and I completely understand that feeling of when somebody starts something that you love and you're so excited, you're sort of like, oh, what did you think? What did you think? And the person's constantly telling you, oh, I haven't gotten around to it yet. I haven't gotten around to it yet. And then every time you see them, you're like, did you get around to it? And they're like, no. That's kind of where I'm at with all of you Malazan fans. The first one, everyone has told me, is not a good indication of where the series goes, and that you really, really have to commit to reading at least the first 3 or 4, and then after that you can throw in the towel if you're not into it. And I would like to do that. That is still my plan, but after reading the first one, I really wanted to make sure that I had the time set aside to really dedicate to taking those books in with the effort they deserve, because some books you can read and it can be kind of a more casual reading experience. And then this one I feel like is one that because there are so many characters, there's so many different arcs throughout the series, you really want to pay attention if you're going to get the most out of that reading experience. And I want to make sure that when I pick these books up, I really have the time to do that. So I don't want to try to rush through all the rest of the books in this next year. Plus, I don't even know if I'm going to like them. So we'll see. Next up, we have a comic book series. I don't actually ever probably plan on reading all of this series because this is a series my husband really likes, and he found that he enjoyed the first main arc of this story. That's what we own. That's probably what I will read. So I would like to continue with that, and that would be Fables by Bill Willingham. What I've read of Fables, I really enjoyed. It is an adult, kind of sort of urban fantasy story. It follows all of these fairy tale people and creatures who have been removed from what they call the homeland, which is where all of them used to live, because of an adversary. And now they are glamored to look normal. They're living in New York City. We follow the sheriff, who happens to be the big bad wolf, and Snow from Snow White. I've read some of it. I've played Wolf Among Us, which I love. So I would like to read more of the story. I would like to get at some point through that whole first arc. Next up, we have a young adult book. The first one would be Crown of Feathers by Nikki Powell-Preto. The second one is going to be coming out very soon, so I'd like to continue this. It follows some Phoenix writers, and for those of you who are usually not finding yourself that captivated by young adult books, maybe you just feel like you want more world building than what a lot of young adult books have, I would say this one, when it comes to the lore of the story, it definitely has that. It's got it more, I would say, than even some adult fantasy books. Switching back to adult, I never got around to reading Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I read Vicious quite a while ago. I feel like I read it before it was super cool, and I enjoyed it. It was definitely really interesting. If you've never heard about it, it's following this man and what used to be his former best friend, but something happened, and so now they're enemies. It's our own world, but they may have discovered a way to get powers. It's a very dangerous way to try to get these powers, and you get a split timeline. You kind of go back and forth between the present and the past, figuring out how these two best friends eventually became enemies. I have heard mixed things about this second one, but I'm still definitely very interested in it. The next book on this list would be the Temeraire series. I have only read the first one, and it was so fun. It is an alternate history. It's the Napoleonic era, but with dragons, which is awesome. The dragons are part of the military, and we follow a dragon rider and his dragon. His dragon is Temeraire. Temeraire is precious. Basically, I always describe, it's like if a puppy could talk and happened to be a reptilian-looking fantastical creature. That's basically what the dragons are in the story. There are some really emotional moments in that book that I was not expecting, and I feel like if I go back and reread that first one, it might make me cry of all the books. But there's just this one part, and I love my doggy, and because the dragons remind me of dogs, there's this one part, it's just so emotional. But I really liked that first book. I've been wanting to read more Naomi Novik, so I'm hoping to read some more of Temeraire. Next up, we have Farseer by Robin Hobb. I read the first one, Assassin's Apprentice, this last year, and just like with Malazan, so many of you said that the first one, you liked it, but you really got to keep going because it takes so much time to really develop. Plus, this was one of the author's earlier works, and so you really want to spend a little bit more time in the world before you throw in the towel, before you kind of call it quits. And I remember reading the first one and being like, I mean, I'll maybe pick up the second one at some point, but I saw so many moments throughout the story that I really enjoyed and that really pulled me in. And then there were other times where it just didn't quite fit to my tastes, and so I really was on the fence. But so many of you have said so many good things about this series that I am convinced I definitely want to get back into it. I think the biggest setback for me when reading the series was I'm not a fan usually of following children in adult fantasy. I don't mind following younger protagonists in young adult books, and I also don't mind following, if it's a multiple point of view story, one character being younger and then other people being older, or we follow a younger character and they become older throughout the story. I'm not really a fan of, we're literally following a kid for this whole book. I don't really like that, and that's what that first one was. But I've been told that the character ages throughout the series, so I think there's a pretty good chance that I'll like the next ones more. Next up on this list would be the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. This series is one of those series that is super long, and so I just feel like I gotta do it in small increments. I don't mind because the books are fun. I definitely know from the few that I've read that there are certain things that are connected, and that eventually he has laid the groundwork for you to see results later on. But I don't mind reading bits and pieces of it. And this follows a wizard detective in our own world. What I have read of them, I just find to be such a good time. Next up on the list would be something by Michael J. Sullivan. So I read the literal first book in the Rhyria Revelations series. And when I say the first one, I mean that originally these books were self-published, and now that they are sold in bookstores and traditionally published, they are bind-ups. So I read the first one in that first bind-up, and there were certain things about that story that I thought the author is very far ahead of some other authors, and then there were other things that I didn't love. There were just a few moments that I didn't really like, and not that it was anything about him as a writer. I definitely want to read more by Michael J. Sullivan, but I need your guys' advice. I know a lot of you really love that series, but I've heard his writing gets better in the prequel series because obviously it's written after. So I'm not sure, do I want to continue with Rhyria, or do I want to read his other series? Next up would be the second book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I read the first one quite a while ago, and I enjoyed it. The whole first chunk, I wasn't really liking it that much. I felt like it was a bit tropey, and it was a plot I've seen before, and then in typical Laini Taylor fashion, she flipped everything on its head, and suddenly it was so captivating and whimsical, and the world was so unique, and I just feel like after having read Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares, that's what I just have to come to expect from her. But I've heard so many mixed things about the continuation of this trilogy, but I still really would like to give it a go. I would like to eventually have finished that trilogy, especially because there's a hint that that trilogy is actually a little bit, kind of, sort of, tiny bit related to the Strange the Dreamer duology. Next up, we have the original Seven Realms series. It's a quartet. There's 4 books, and I read that series, and I very much enjoyed it. And that has a continuation. There's a series that's come out that follows certain characters' children, I believe, from the original series. I've tried not to look too much into it because I don't want to spoil anything, because some of the characters from the original show up in this next series, so I kind of don't want to know until I read it. But I have seen from some people really good things about this continuation, and from other people I have seen mixed things. Some people really don't like it. I'm always super hesitant when there's continuations like this, because when I finish a series and I liked the ending, I have shut the door on that, and I'm like, okay, it was bittersweet because I loved it, and I'm sad now that it's over, but also I'm happy because it ended well. And so sometimes opening that door back up to explore characters and that world again, sometimes it doesn't work for me, but I still want to give the series a try. That's it for some series that I want to continue in 2020. I'm sure there are other ones that I'm just totally blanking on and have forgotten, but as of right now, those are the ones that I want to try to read some more of. Let me know some stories that you're hoping to read more of this upcoming year. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.